We're going to transition into our keynote speaker now. And before I introduce Lieutenant Colonel Chris Atkins, I just want to tell everybody we're going to be handling the Q&A through the chat today. And so if you've got questions for any of our panelists as they're speaking, please post those in the chat. And what I'll be doing is I'll be monitoring those and copying and pasting into a kind of a document that I can read to the panelists at the end. Not every question, of course, is going to get answered. We'll do our best to kind of consolidate some of those things and look for common themes. But having said that, without further ado, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Atkins is the Chief of Behavioral Health for the Tennessee Army National Guard with extensive experience in both military and clinical settings. As the master practitioner of accelerated resolution therapy, Lieutenant Colonel Atkins has completed ART sessions with over 100 deployed service members during his 2022 deployment to the Al Assad Air Base in Iraq as the Chief of Behavioral Health, and during his current deployment as the Chief Behavioral Health Officer on the Southern Border mission, providing care for over 1,000 service members. He has consistently seen an average 80% improvement across the deployed service member clients. His innovative approach combines trauma therapy with leadership development, emphasizing emotional intelligence and transforming leadership skills. Lieutenant Colonel Atkins has been instrumental in rebranding behavioral health initiatives within the military, promoting holistic wellness models that align with the Army's holistic health and fitness goals. So without further ado, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Atkins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jeff. And welcome, everyone. Thank you, Lainey, for the charge. You included combat veterans at the very onset of ART as you designed it to be. So it's empowering to me to be in such a powerful community. I'm a two-tour Iraq combat veteran. And as Jeff said, I'm presently deployed to the U.S. southern border. It's a politicized mission. I am not political.
Chris, hang on one second. We lost your audio there. We lost you right after you said, "I am not political."
I am not political.
It's like Zoom stepped in and did something there.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, go ahead.
It was the NSA. Sorry about that. So
yeah.
I'm basically the community mental health clinician for 600 service members serving on the U.S.-Mexican border, which you may have seen on the news. This keynote is about lives saved, lives changed, and multiple systems that I'm aware of on the brink of something better. And so we're just going to jump in, and I'll just start by sharing my journey, if you will. For combat veterans, the war does not end when they get home. PTSD hijacks their sleep, their marriages, their careers. Some suffer for decades. My dad was a combat medic in Vietnam in a burn unit for 18 months. I basically grew up observing the horrors of war in my home. My dad's falling into alcohol, other addictive drugs of the 70s, and full-blown PTSD that nobody knew how to address. He went to the best psychoanalyst of the day. He went to the VA. They did not know what this was in the 70s, in the 80s. They gave him more drugs. So it took me 20 years as a mental health clinician. I graduated University of Michigan MSW program in 2001. It took me 20 years to find a therapy that actually effectively addressed post-traumatic stress disorder. You may be able to guess what it is, but I'm not going to give it away yet. So here I am in Iraq, 2007, 2008. The surge. There's 150,000 troops in Iraq, 150,000 in Afghanistan. I worked at what's called a Combat Operational Stress Control Restoration Center. That's a psychiatric hospital run by Navy, Marine, and Army psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. I'm an LCSW myself. I really wished I had art, but all I had was CBT, a tiny bit of mindfulness exercises, and a lot of holistic well-being action planning. It was not enough. Their nervous systems were incredibly dysregulated, and as a younger clinician, I was 32 years old. We just did not have the smartest treatment modalities back then. I mean, we were taught the Mitchell model, which is group traumatic event processing following the trauma. Everyone shares in a circle and shares their trauma. Imagine the vicarious traumatization of that model. We did that. This is the last half of my tour. Green Zone, International Zone, downtown Baghdad. 122 millimeter rockets blowing holes into the concrete. And here we are standing where one just hit 5 minutes ago, ourselves desensitized to the trauma around us. What they needed were these soldiers who I saw in fetal positions, sobbing on the rocks, shaking violently, disassociating. What they needed was a mind-body solution to regulate the nervous system and consolidate the trauma they had just experienced yesterday, last week, last month, or being raped at age 9, and then they joined the army to find a family that they never had. They needed a scene match to get to that 9-year-old. I just didn't have the solution. None of us did. I do remember this about that year. Our psychiatrists were giving out a lot of psych meds: Klonopin, Valium, Xanax, 2 service members with assault weapons, and our soldiers were getting hooked. I remember every bed in our restoration psychiatric facility full. We were medicating horrifically dysregulated nervous systems and amygdalas just raging on fire. We just didn't. And yes, meanwhile, Dr. Hogue is doing meticulous research in a mental health study out of Walter Reed at that time. He was discovering this via a huge research study that he did every year. And he would later publish and find, aligned with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's work, that the body keeps the score. We just didn't have it embedded into the clinical arsenal of Army mental health or Navy or Air Force, because all branches were there. My boss was a full bird colonel Navy psychiatrist. So CBT, prolonged exposure, medications help some, but many veterans cannot tolerate retelling their worst memories over and over. They avoid help. Some drop out of treatment. After that tour for 7 years, from 2009 to 2016, I served on the mental health teams at the VA and welcomed home the warriors, the same ones I had just seen downrange. Guess what? We had a doc there who was giving out oxycodone, hydrocodone, fentanyl patches for pain, chronic back pain. He was continuing the meds, and they were continuing the stuff that they had gotten hooked on a year, 2 years ago. They were self-medicating their hyper-aroused nervous systems. I remember veterans would tell me they hated prolonged exposure therapy and cognitive processing therapy because they had to go through this huge manual, but they kind of liked EMDR because it calmed their nerves. However, some said it made them feel uncomfortable and like a scab had been ripped off, and they couldn't stop the bleeding. They went home and had nightmares. They weren't getting to the core root of the trauma. They were just going around in this dark place trying to find it. I remember thinking, okay, there's got to be a better way. I realized then that I know to the very core of my being that we needed therapies to work on the brain's natural healing mechanisms, not against them. Our meds were causing more problems than help in many cases. And I lost several veterans to suicide in their early 20s. I said, our combat veterans deserve better. Fast forward to 2020. I'm on COVID-19 orders. COVID's raging. COVID orders was I'm the behavioral health officer stateside in Tennessee National Guard. I'm the chief of behavioral health there. More trauma. I was helping military police responding to Black Lives Matter protests across the country, many of them conflicted with what they were doing. They were facing multiple stressors, and on the other hand, helping medics process the occupational stress of swabbing hundreds of US citizens raging with COVID, some of them at age 18 removing dead bodies from nursing homes who fell prey to COVID. As a military clinician, I'd entered a code red zone of trauma treatment. I needed an effective treatment protocol fast, knowing that I was soon going in the fall of 2021 to a tactical operating base, an ISIS fighting base with special forces and thousands of soldiers and airmen who would be dealing with trauma. I engaged in an intense research campaign on my own, but to find the best treatment modality with the most research to address trauma. Luckily, Lieutenant Megan Fletcher, a young LCSW clinician, joined my team in Nashville. Lieutenant Fletcher was a private practice therapist in the Fort Campbell area whose husband was an active duty 101st Airborne soldier. And she told me about this transformational therapy called accelerated resolution therapy that was quickly and thoroughly neutralizing her soldiers and civilian clients' trauma quickly with sustained results. She raved about this therapy. She was like magically talking about painting canvases in the soldiers' minds and rescripting trauma into new director scenes and going to some magical bridge and fountain. I was like, wow, give me some, like, what kind of therapy is that? I was like, is this real? And I was like, okay, what does the research say? Well, first I watched a video of this really smart clinician named Lainey Rosenzweig who created the therapy. And I was like, this is too good to be true. I still didn't believe. First research article was the work of Talcoletto and colleagues published in Military Medicine that very year. And they researched art with active duty during deployed operations, significantly reduced acute stress symptoms due to real-time combat. It was quick, it was well tolerated. And the authors concluded, this isn't military medicine, this is the Journal of Military Medicine. So uber peer reviewed. The authors say art is a viable first line option for managing acute stress reactions in deployed military settings. In 8 months, I was going to Iraq, back to Iraq. So 6 months later, I'm in Texas at a beautiful horse ranch, I think Mansfield, Texas, at a group therapy office where you could go to therapy and look out the window and see these beautiful horses. And I'm learning art with clinicians. I was blown away. We arted one another, and tears streamed down our faces as we reimagined the very core images that had haunted us for decades, and literally erased these images and replaced them with new empowering scenes using eye movements. When our bodies got stressed, we calmed our bodies down with eye movements. And I experienced firsthand, as a combat veteran and a clinician for combat veterans, how powerful art works by engaging the brain's reconsolidation window, guided rescripting quickly. Body's calm, emotional charge fades. It was like memory editing for the mind, body, and soul. And I put all these colors in the slide because of how colorful my brain felt. I was like, I have a silver bullet to bring into the combat zone. And I did. I flew into the ISIS fighting base, Al Assad Air Base. You might remember it from the news. This was the one that missiles blew up in the year before we got there. Of course, we all fly in there. I was the officer in charge of behavioral health for the entire base. We're talking about a base of 4,000 airmen, soldiers, Space Force was there. I'd never met them, and NATO allies from 6 different countries: Germany, UK, Norway, Spain. I designed a program called Wellness at AAAB. We call it AAAB, Al Assad Air Base. We pulled together the chaplains, physical fitness trainers from the gym, huge dudes. My 3-person wellness team, formerly behavioral health, and service members could come to us just to feel better. We used ear seeds to activate the Shen Men of Chinese acupuncture. I'm a lieutenant colonel, so they let me do all this. Right? Maybe if I was a lieutenant, they wouldn't. But I turned an abandoned Boeing airline hangar into a yoga studio for daily yoga with Adrienne. She's on YouTube. We just put her on the wall, but she's pretty good. We used virtual reality sessions where soldiers could do mindfulness via an app called Trip, TRIPP, on Oculus. You can design your own mindfulness experience with affirming audio of what you need. Check it out. It's really cool. I got permission to do off the record sessions. Once again, off the record sessions. It's not going to hurt your military career as long as it's not suicide, homicide, bipolar, all of the big, bells and whistles. We could help address your stress. We could help you address a little bit of anxiety. And we did these one-on-one sessions with aromatherapy diffused into the air, Zen tea from Tazo. I know I'm like real hippie colonel here. What was I doing? I was calming the nervous system of the service member from the minute they entered our general area. And in one-on-one sessions, the linchpin of it all, art. I did over 100 sessions in a combat zone. We had rocket attacks, we had drone attacks, but with art, I will call the results anything short of miraculous. I'll read from my clinical log. These are the clinical sessions that got me a basic level certified in art. January 6, 2022, fear of large crowds, 7-1 on autometer, 1 session. Session 2, images of rocket attack scenes causing anxiety and disrupting sleep, 8-0 on autometer. Sleep improved from 3 hours a night to 8 hours a night. I saw these sustained results over time. I was there for 7 months. I saw them for months. The sleep was sustained, nightmares gone, anxiety and panic attacks gone. Next client, bulimia body image, 9-1 on autometer. New scenes of body acceptance. February 5, 2022, scenes from past sexual assault, 8-0 on autometer, 1 session. The 2 most powerful sessions with art in the combat zone were where I treated 2 cases of military sexual assault. It took 1 session, 1 client, 2 sessions, the next client, because there was a second scene work that needed to be done. In 1 case, the client chose not to share, just followed my hand whilst tears streaming down their face. Before art, their sleep was 2 to 3 hours a night, haunted with nightmares of their attacker. After art, went to 0. The next week, they came to session. I said, "How have you been?" Without sitting down, they excitedly said, "Sir, I'm sleeping through the night. I haven't had 1 panic attack, not 1 nightmare. It's like a whole new life. I can't even see the attacker's face from that night if I try. I only see it the new way." I searched my mind for what bad thing happened to that soldier. I didn't know. They didn't tell me. And I didn't need to know, and they didn't need to tell me. What kind of gift is that? What kind of magic is that? They didn't need to. They just needed to reconsolidate, develop those proteins. I'm not a neuropsychologist or neurophysiologist, but they had taught their amygdala and nervous system that threat was no more, and it was neutralized. It was like the new reality was their safety, trust, and their grounding anchor. All I had to do is trust the process, And now they had relief. I saw the soldier for 6 more weeks, sustained results. We just engaged in holistic well-being planning, did some more mindfulness and grounding work, which was minimally needed. But they just said, well, I must make sure that I'm in this good place, and I am steadfast in this good place. Another client said, "Sir, I feel free for the first time. This therapy art doesn't just ease symptoms, it gave me my life back. No drugs needed. No months of talk therapy, just relief. Breakup, 9 to 0. Childhood emotional abuse, 7 to 0. In one case, I worked with an interpreter. This interpreter, as a child, was an Iraqi citizen, and their own childhood home was bombed by Allied forces bombs during the initial invasion in 2002, I believe it was. They remember screaming as bombs fell and destroyed their childhood home. Now they come back and they're triggered by the incoming alarms. There's radars that sense rockets coming in. It's like, doo, doo, incoming, incoming, take cover, take cover. This really calm voice, like you're sprinting because you have 8 seconds to get to a bunker. Every time they heard that incoming alarm, because it was also present back during the incident, they would have a panic attack. They would wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep. After 2 art sessions, their sleep went from 4 to 8 hours a night. The alarms no longer caused panic. They had addressed the past bombings and scripted them in this beautiful director scene into a beautiful blue protective dome that protected their childhood home. The bombs bounced off. They just held their family tight. And they went, and it was a scene of safety. The client had brought that beautiful protective blue dome from the director's scene into their waking sleep and their sleeping sleep, and it became the reality of trust and safety. They attribute art with keeping their career, restoring their safety, and their trust with their friends and family. They told me they would have had to lose their job, a very good paying job and career that they loved, if it were not for art. Before I leave this slide, I want to say that the behavioral health clinician that preceded me had 55 medical evacuations for psychiatric emergencies in the year prior to me. In my year, I had 5. 55 to 5. Now, I'd have to do a deeper analysis to say whether that was attributed to art, but I did the cost savings analysis, and it's several millions and millions of dollars saved in U.S. funds because of art and a well-being themed model. So pretty exciting. So where am I today? U.S. southern border. Next deployment. My state deploys a lot, and I get tagged a lot. I'm the chief of behavioral health at the U.S. southern border. Pretty highly active task force. There's actually 7 of us across the entire U.S. border. I use art with troops facing high stakes humanitarian stress, soldiers under extreme conditions. They get relief in about 1 to 2 sessions. Once again, art works across continents, across states, across systems, probably across planets. If we go to Mars or SpaceX takes us to the space station, art will work there. My favorite thing right now, like last week, is when I can do art with a young soldier, age 19, raised in poverty, who's never been to therapy in their life, who faced intense childhood trauma, abuse, sexual assault, crime, violence, viewing deaths within feet at a very young age. I'm able to do a few sessions of art and address things. I've worked with a client who was in Manhattan on 9/11, soldier client. They had never processed the trauma from 9/11. 2 sessions, processed 2 significant scenes they needed to work on with prolonged symptom resolution. Art is quick. So why How is it set apart? How does it work? Well, as the website said, as Lainey said, she created it, it takes the best of all the therapies: Gestalt, cognitive behavioral, exposure, imaginal, in vivo, relaxation techniques, and psychodynamic therapy, and wraps it all up in a super therapy with voluntary image replacement to replace those negative images with positive ones via Laney's favorite term, positization. There's no other therapy like it. It's nonverbal. You don't need to tell the story, which is important for vets. That empowers them. They may not want to verbalize it, but they just want to get that image out of their mind. It rewrites how trauma is stored. It works with the body, calming the amygdala. The body's storing trauma. The amygdala is activated. The brain is doing what it should for fight and flight. If we experience threatening events, our brain remembers that pain. But the memory, and I learned this from Marsha Mandel, my advanced training instructor. Please sign up for advanced. I don't know if you all can sign up for Marsha because you probably have to fill an auditorium with all the advanced clients. But memories feel like they're happening now. Unprocessed trauma is driving the re-experiencing of trauma. The memory is getting triggered during flashbacks. The memory is hijacking our brains and bodies, and talk therapy cannot address that. It can address traumatic memory. It's certainly not reimagine them and imprint them on us like art does. So we have an inferiority problem clinically. Here's the mic drop. I was so enchanted with art, and I was having so many VA friends. I have a lot of friends that are in the Army that are at the VA, and they were all going to EMDR training. I have a friend who works at the VA, but he's also in the Guard. He's the director of clinical operations. He said, Chris, I got all these VA clinicians getting trained in EMDR. I'll train you in EMDR for free. It was like $1,500. I said, why not? I have to, I'm a PhD student. I'm at the dissertation phase. I have to study this other treatment modality. So I got to study it. I like a scientist. And by the way, if you're in the Guard or Reserves or active duty or at the VA, the National Defense Authorization Act will pay up to $1,500 a year for you to be trained in a trauma training. The National Defense Authorization Act paid for me to go see Marsha Mandel for advanced art training because I'm in the Guard Reserve. Talk to your commander. They can hook you up. So I guess that's how I got to my 40 hours of EMDR basic training. So I go to this training. I spend all this time. I learned it. And I asked myself for about 15 questions. With 15 clients, is this one right for EMDR? Is this client right for EMDR or art? Every single time, tactically and clinically, the answer has always been art. And here's why. Art. I don't have time for EMDR. It is very detailed, very magnifying glass, analytical. Art is fast. They don't have to verbalize trauma. It's guided by the therapist. There's minimal emotional flooding or re-traumatization, which is what I need. These service members stand on the southern border looking at drug cartel members that the president has declared a terrorist threat. I can't sit there for 8 weeks and ask them to go with that. I need to re-image the incident X into empowering rescripted directors seeing Y. So they have control, because my mission is conserve fighting strength. My mission is to help that service member achieve their most exceptional state of mind, body, and spirit well-being. Okay, I got my EMDR protocol. We're going to retell traumatic events. We're going to say, go with that, go with that, go with that. I'm like, where's the image rescripting? Where is the image placement? Where is me calming their body when they get flooded? Yes, I do have this container and I have butterfly hugs, but I'm not told to calm them as I'm asking them to view an image, nor am I asking them to take the image and I want you to see it the new way. I'm not asking them to do that. I'm just asking them to go with that. I think this was said during advanced training. I may be quoting Marsha Mandel, who's our next speaker, and she can confirm. This could be a peer of mine, like Lacey. If Lacey's out there, hi Lacey. EMDR is like a dark, scary cave, and here you go with that. Here's your flashlight. Here you go. Just go with that. Go with that. Now I'm in the dark chasm of this cave, trying to squeeze through a crevice the size of my body. Art is like, here's a flashlight, and I'm here with you all along this journey. We got this. Very, very empowering. So I just keep using art. And if somebody's here from Endria or the EMDR community, EMDR does have a place, but it is not in a tactical environment where things are moving a million miles an hour. Soldiers are moving hotels. They're moving operations. They're go, go, go. I need something quick and something that works. Very high impact. And as a clinician, that's art. Here's my tips. There is going to be a pretty cool interactive portion here in a minute. Here's my tips for using art with service members or veterans. We have Guard, Reserve soldiers from all 6 branches that are in your communities. There's over 1.2 million US service members, active duty, Guard, Reserve. So many of them are your clients. Be curious, learn from them. You don't need to be an expert in military culture at all. Just be curious, ask the Socratic question. Tell me more about that. What is that term you used? Be authentic. Be yourself. My specialty, if you can imagine, in my private practice is working with first responders and cops. I have seen cops, as you have, many of them more war torn than combat veterans I've served with. Cops that were in mass murder situations, stacking human bodies to try to form a shield between them and the attacker. I can't say that I've ever had to do that intensity of trauma work with service members as I have with law enforcement on the front lines of SWAT. They say, I like it that I'm in therapy with you, but it doesn't feel like therapy. So be approachable, be authentic, and exercise empathy. It is not safe to exercise feelings in a military environment. Why? Because they train us suck it up and drive on. Pain is weakness leaving the body. One first sergeant carried a straw around in his pocket, not mine, another unit far away. And anytime somebody start complaining or whining or saying, I don't like this, I don't feel right about it, they grab the straw and say, suck it up. They'd hand it to the service member to suck it up. Feelings aren't safe. So you are their first safe place. Follow their lead. They may only want or need one art session. Most of my soldier and veteran clients just want one art session. This includes very war-torn cops that I know need like 4 art sessions. But they say one art session, and then they say, I just want to talk today. It's okay. Then they just need to talk today, just to make sense of it all. And then join every nonprofit and for-profit focusing on veteran mental health. Cornerstone Military Services is out of Nashville. That's a huge veteran and soldier focused nonprofit, but they pay clinicians pretty well. Military One Source will pay 10 sessions for free for every service member. They do panel clinicians. You can go to their website. VA community care contracts. It's very tough to navigate VA community care contracts, I know, and TRICARE. But once you're in TRICARE, you are you're in it, right? And VA community care will contract with clinicians. Once you are in that network, and then you become their go-to. And then this is crazy, but consider joining the National Guard. This is not my full-time job. The age limit is 48. Most of the clinicians I've referenced today, Lieutenant Fletcher and others, are VA full-time clinicians or private practice clinicians that just do this 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, and sometimes deployments. There's a $15,000 a year annual bonus on top of your drill pay, and ends up being about a $35,000 a year part-time job. So anyway, it's a fun option. Don't have to, but it's out there. What's the research say? Strong evidence. Laney mentioned KIP. Multiple studies showing that art reduces PTSD in combat veterans and rapid symptom improvement after a few sessions. I brought up everything from body image to anxiety, addictions, OCD, phobias. It's all in the what art script to use when right here in my handy dandy binder. It works with everything. Pang, marked improvements via art, even with when other treatments fail. And Hernandez et al. Found art is effective with special operations. I can confirm that because I work with special operations at Al Asad Air Base with miraculous results. I probably shouldn't even have been privy to some of the information because I only have a secret clearance, but it works very well. Great work. Hernandez confirmed it. It's true. All right. So I have like an interactive question for you all, but I just want to stop for questions for question and answer for a moment. Jeff, I don't know if you want to field those. I've talked
I
for a
do. I
while.
have, yeah, Chris, I've got a ton actually, and I'm trying to stay on top of these. Let me just go rapid fire with do you want to do about 3 or 4 of these and then jump back into presenting, something like that?
Yes,
Does that
sir.
work for you? Okay.
Yes, sir.
How do you deal with moral injury due to carrying out cruel and unnecessary orders?
I honestly don't see a lot of moral injury. I think that's a perspective of someone who's not served, that soldiers are struggling with that. But a lot of times, in most cases, they have reserved the fact, many times raised in a military family, very patriotic, very salute the flag. And they believe in this kind of warrior ethos and values, in this values code they have, that what they are doing is in the best interest of the United States. Very, very seldomly have I seen moral injury where it's like, it was wrong what we did. When I did see that was in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Iraq and Afghanistan clients at the VA after they got back, especially Afghanistan, because we ended up giving the country back to the very terrorists that they fought, right? So I had to honestly take a holistic approach and work with my chaplain. And my chaplain helped with the spiritual. VA has chaplains, and the Army has chaplains. Me and the chaplain have always been best buddies because if there's deep soul searching conflicts, they will adjust that response to whatever. If there's a spiritual, moral, questionable conflict, whatever that religion or lack of is atheist, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, whatever it is, they will customize and help them search and find, to quote Viktor Frankl, man's search for me, woman's or man's search for meaning. So that's
Yeah.
the best way I could answer that.
Okay. How well do the results endure when the client is continually exposed to new traumas, such as in a combat zone?
What I found was art teaches about 15 mind body strategies in one session that they took with them and used during the next traumatic exposure. They literally were self soothing, self calming, and processing the next explosion in real time once they were safe using eye movements as they were taught. They were changing the channel as they were taught. They were rescripting the new images as they had just done. They're like, I know this. That I know how to help this. And they excitedly told me about that. That's what's awesome about it. We teach them this arsenal of interventions in just one session. That's pretty amazing. They use it, all of the techniques. And one client even went to the bridge in the fountain after they had done that work. Obviously, I'm like, wait a sec, you don't need me to help you do that? They're like, oh, it was far enough away where it was just like, okay, I'm feeling nervous and anxious. I feel this tightness in my chest. I moved the tightness in my chest just like we did in session. I'm like, there's no other therapy that does that. Next one.
That's good. Okay. Do you offer briefs for other installations regarding your use and knowledge of ART? This person said, I currently work in behavioral health with the United States Marine Corps, and our leadership could benefit from hearing you and your experience for buy in. I am the only ART trained civilian clinician on base.
Oh yeah, I'll fly out to Camp Pendleton, and I'll if Lenny's okay with it, and I will talk to all of the leaders and the clinical team if needed, and share the applications because I've worked with Marines in Iraq and working with um, I worked with Marines at the VA, about 1,500 of them. So yeah, that I'm working through art headquarters. I would love to do that. That'd be a dream.
Okay. Let's do one more and we'll kick it back to you for continued presentation. There's a lot more, by the way, but we'll save those till the end. I work solely with veterans and first responders. Many times going over the bridge is triggering for global war on terror vets. Is there a different metaphor which you use with the same effect?
What was the term, Jeff?
The GWOT vets, the global war on terror veterans, they were saying that many times the metaphor of going over the bridge is triggering, according to this person. So for
Yeah,
veterans and first responders, so they want to know, is there a different metaphor which you use for that would have the same effect?
that's a really, really good point. I've used the bridge successfully with first responders, a lot of first responders, and I haven't had resistance yet. But if they have shared in your initial assessment that they had a trauma surrounding the bridge, I just wouldn't use a bridge. But the bridge they often find is a small, tranquil nature bridge over a stream, and then there's a fountain beyond the bridge in this tranquil clearing. Right, it's a calm, peaceful bridge, not a 9/11 bridge, but yeah, I definitely alter that to a safe. Um, I mean, art's the land of metaphors, right? So, what is a safe transition object for you? It's not a bridge. It's my hiking trail in my backwoods. So let's take the hiking trail and to this fountain. You know, it's just
Mhm.
a beautiful close.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, everyone's asking for your slides as well. And so
Yeah.
if you can provide those to Robin, for anybody that's asking in the chat, for all the presenters and panelists that provide us the slides, we will have those posted along with a video of each of their presentations. That'll be archived. It'll take probably about 2 weeks to get those up, but that'll be on the member side of the art website. Okay, so Chris, we've got about we're at 10:44 with a hard stop at 11, so we've got about 15, 16 minutes. So I want to kick it back over to you. Lots more questions, and I'll continue to field those. But I know that you
Okay.
had some interactive stuff you wanted to do, so why don't you take that away?
Yeah, I'm a systems thinker, right? So I have some concerns. I have some questions. In the EMDR training, there's all these VA clinicians being trained in EMDR. I found art trained therapists in the EMDR training. I feel like a covert operative, by the way. I'm an art therapist covertly embedded in this training, and I'm having secret chats with the art clinician in Zoom, having secret chats. Like, we like art better. Wait, why aren't they calming the body? Where's the imagery scripting? Or where's the scene work, right? Where's, so I can't just go with that. Why are we going with that? I have found out there are VA clinical directors who forbid art to be used by their clinicians, and they forbid EMDR too. They don't want anything eye movement. I guess they just want us to talk about feelings. And these clinicians are frustrated. In the DoD, art is funded and it is 100% approved. In fact, the DoD paid for me to go to advanced training with Marsha Mandel, who's speaking next, which was amazing. Oh, by the way, Marsha, I have used a little liar with soldiers and veterans, and there are people that are sober because of the little liar script. They are sober today, and they are on the wagon because of the mischievous little liar. So Lainey, mischievous little liar is amazing. So, but systemically, what there's policy inertia. There's something with the VA politically, with the National Center for PTSD, that is the huge research arm in Palo Alto, has endorsed only 3 gold star research based protocols for treating trauma: prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive processing therapy, and eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's political and it's health clinic politics. So my question for the audience is, how do we scale art? How do we think outside the box? And this is the challenge. I want to know from you, if you scan the QR code with your phone, it will bring up a survey. And Jeff, if you can put the link in the chat, they can click the link and go right to the survey from their computers.
It's up there right now.
Yes, sir. What if you had a chance to speak to key leaders, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, maybe Secretary of the VA Doug Collins, highest level, and then you were able to say, here's how we make art available to every veteran, service member, and here's the policy you need to change, the program that'll help do it. Maybe it's an innovative clinical approach, a unique clinical approach, or a training initiative, or even partnerships that will innovate and pave the way for art to scale to get to those in need. Maybe it's how we scale art in your community or the organization you work for, if there's institutional policy or programmatic resistance. Well, it's kind of an outside the box right brain thinking exercise, but how do we scale art? This only goes to me for one purpose. I want to write a white paper to the DoD that says, let's have an honest, frank summit featuring Lainey Rosenzweig, creator of art, and have an honest, frank discussion about what our clinical protocols are. Because a lot of my clinical colleagues don't know what art is, so I have to educate them one by one by one. The evidence is overwhelming. It needs to be mass broadcast. So the white paper is the Defense Health Agency, who oversees clinical protocols, and AR MedCom, the Army Reserve Medical Command, who oversees clinical protocols. So basically, it's kind of like you're helping write this paper, but you're also helping me give a document back to art headquarters to say, here's what innovation looks like amongst participants. So if you can take a few minutes, I'm just going to write a report, a consulting firm document, free from the US government because I'm on active duty orders, back to your leaders, your art leaders. So just type some things in there, think outside the box, but it's helping me say, hey, DoD, can we have a task force that has an honest, frank discussion on clinic protocols? And you know what it does? It gives the VA this ability to do the same. The VA needs to have a frank and honest discussion at the highest levels with this approaching the Secretary of the VA, Doug Collins. He's new, he's only been there for 2 months, and the lead director of clinical operation of the director at the National Center for PTSD. And forgive me if these conversations are already in place, to say you cannot block a treatment protocol for use by clinicians that can liberate the 9 million veterans that are serviced by the VA. That's a tragedy. That's wrong. It's just flat wrong. And the argument is they're not only blocking art, they're blocking EMDR in many clinics. So it's like, what are we afraid of eye movement therapy that actually works? Well, I speak of art. Okay, so that was the challenge, Jeff. And I don't know if we want to take questions or thoughts on
No.
that because it does apply internationally. I mean, this applies to international organizations as well, I'm sure, in other countries and continents. Over to you, Jeff.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm going to jump back into some questions here. First one, somebody asked earlier, are they still using ART at Al Assad at the base over there?
That's part of my concern. ART is only used by the clinician who is certified in ART. So what we've done for 25 years in the combat zone is hand off clinics from tour to tour to tour for 32 tours. It's like a marathon race with the baton, right? We just hand the baton to the next clinician, and the next clinician has their own treatment protocol. So whether they use rage reduction therapy with Nerf bats from the 70s, or whether they use, which, we figured out that didn't work, or whether they use EMDR or they're just a cognitive behavioral therapy person, they use whatever protocols that they choose to use. So we don't have assuredness that they're using art. I couldn't put a sign on the wall that says this is an art only zone. I wish I could have.
Okay, let's see here. First of all, I want to, before I go further, Chris, with some questions, I just wanted to share with you. There were a million thank yous for your service. Um, Extremely supportive group of people. One even said that you should do a TED Talk to complement the one that Lainey did. So there's just a little bit of encouragement for you. Yeah, let's get that done.
I'm writing that down in my super secret squirrel notebook. Do TED Talk.
Do TED Talk. Today's to-do list, right? Let's get that done by the end of the day. Okay, here's a couple more for you. If someone is unable to do eye movements due to injury, motion sickness, they can't focus on the image or move eyes or whatever, have you used another modality for the bilateral stimulations, such as tappers, like an EMDR, or drumming? And did you find that that worked?
Uh, I don't know because I've had hundreds of clients with art and nobody was unable to move their eyes. In fact, nobody was aversive to moving their eyes. So I guess I'll open that up maybe in the chat to other individuals. But yeah, it's it's about bilateral um, brain stimulation. So tappers, I mean, bilateral IO's got those tappers that sync the tappers to the bilateral eye movement for virtual therapy. And then you can get the light bars that also have tappers in the real world. So
Mm,
uh, there's no excuse to not use tappers if they can't follow either the
okay.
little blue ball or the fingers.
Chris, what do you do when a veteran has cut off emotions? He still finds ART to be helpful, but sees emotion as weakness and says he cannot feel sensations. Um, the emotional numbing protects him, of course, him or her, obviously on this, but obviously keeps joy and intimacy at bay. What's the best way to address this?
If they say that overtly, it's because they've been conditioned to believe that by their childhood, by a real tough stepdad that beat the shit out of them when they got out of place, or by a really sadomasochistic military leader. Oftentimes, you'll see him not necessarily at basic training because drill instructors control themselves, but at their first assignment, when because of their rank, somebody's got to whoop them into shit, teach them a lesson. So there's hazing and bullying that goes on. So emotions are shameful. So what I would do is just trust the process. And you could say, hey, you don't have to experience emotion during this therapy, but I want you to know that this is a safe and trusting place and you can be your authentic self and present yourself in any way that you need to as you go through these um, these little exercises. And I want you, and to build your office into a safe place is to do that. And you can say that when they're given permission to not experience emotion, what I found is they are crying when they're viewing that image because you've given them permission for the first time in their life to have the cathartic release of experiencing emotion because we do have emotions and they do have them. They have just been hyper compressed into a really like pressure cooker sphere that's in the back right corner of their brain. And when you do that bilateral stimulation, I have seen the toughest special forces sob because I gave them a cup of Tazo Zen tea and diffused lavender into the air and said, hey, brother, this is a safe place. You can be your authentic self. We're leaving all that stuff on the outside, all those haters and naysayers on the outside of this room.
It's good. It's good. Okay, we've got about 3 minutes. Let's see if we can knock maybe two or three more out here really quick. Any notable differences in outcomes with soldiers who have ADHD, whether diagnosed or not?
Um, ADHD is an epidemic in the current Generation Z force. It's so much to where we've allowed soldiers to be on Ritalin and Adderall, and they do not need waivers in the United States military to deploy. Can you imagine? I believe that we have a hyperstimulated brain dynamic because of this, right? Our brains are being hyperstimulated with rapid moving images, not just this, our computer screens we're looking at now. So ADHD, I haven't seen the ADHD script. So now I need to go to whatever training will get me that ADHD script. But what that will allow us to do is teach the brain to methodically calm, stabilize. And we literally are. I could totally see ADHD as being addressed first and foremost by the script. And then we can do the other work. Because I am seeing tons of soldiers who come to me just for ADHD. They want to be diagnosed, they want to be treated, they want to get on meds. So first do the ADHD script, then if there's trauma to underlie it, we'd almost treat it like we would substance. Onion, go down to the trauma, right? Well, let's address ADHD first, and then we can learn the rhythmic pace of doing the scene work. What are your thoughts?
Good word. Yeah, put those in the comments for sure. Okay, last one, Chris. Let's go with this. Can we have access to the VR Pro, the virtual reality program you discussed, or is that only for the military?
No, I'll put it on a slide. and I'll do a link to their website. You can get it on Oculus, and it's amazing. I'll show you the protocol I use with service members. It's like $20 a year. It's called TRIP, TRIPP, but highly recommend a 200 Oculus will do it. But it's beautiful. It teaches mindfulness, but they design their own intention, affirmation, body image. Works with all clients, not just service members. So yeah, and I'll shoot the slides over to Robin and Sue and Lainey and the team.
Okay, brilliant. All right, I'm going to put the link for everybody one more time that corresponds with the QR code in there, and you just double click on that in the chat if you don't know how to use the QR code. But same thing. Chris, thank you for everything. Again, super positive comments. In fact,
Thank
when
you.
we threw out the idea of the TED Talk out there, people went nuts for it. So 710 attendees can't be wrong in terms of supporting you on that. So I guess you got your work cut out for you, and now your afternoon is planned out.